Do we want to see if they actually have a comment or a question before we promote them, Lou? We can just check that real quickly.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. All right. Up next, we had Karen come in. Karen, I'm gonna allow you to unmute. Do you have a question or a comment?
If you can hear me?
Yep, let me go ahead and promote you to a panelist. We'll bring you in just a second.
Okay. Can everybody hear me?
Loud and clear.
Yes, we can.
Okay, fine. So I have a lot of things that I would like to say about what has happened and what is going on. First off, a lot of these projects seem to be focused on development with big developers, and there's being given short shrift to projects that we're not going to find anyplace else. A developer is going to come in and they're going to buy the property and they're going to want to develop the property. And whether they get the incentive or not is not going to be as big a deal as if you're looking for something that you're not going to get under normal circumstances. What I'm talking about is the artwork that has been proposed by the Baldwin Civic Association and branding. I think that people in Baldwin does not have its identity and people are not aware of what we are about. We need to improve that. And these are things that are not going to come from any place else but besides the DRI. So I think that we should make sure that there is that component in it. I also question how you took the chamber sign and the Historical Society's request for building improvements and the start of adding on to the museum and lumped it into the grant program that goes with facades. I think that they should remain separate. They should be voted on by the committee separately instead of having the town of Hempstead be reviewing. It's just adding another layer, and it's also kicking it off into another area. I think that we need to be looking at and focusing on something besides the development, because the development will happen. These people have put out there, they're interested in happening, but you're not going to get the money elsewhere for things like the branding, the art, the sign, and the Historical Society. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. I will let you know, I think it's good news that the branding and marketing is still part of the list of projects to be considered by the LPC. As I think, the last LPC meeting, we looked at a number of projects. We just divvied them up into two groups. One's like the TOD mixed use group, and one's the placemaking group, and the arts and branding and marketing are still under consideration under the placemaking group. So that's still on the table for the LPC to vet moving forward.
About the arts program.
Including the arts program is still on the table for the LPC to decide. We did have an issue as far as the sponsorship there, and sometimes these projects, including like the Coach Diner sign, they were ready to fall off because they no longer had a sponsor who could front the necessary funding and then wait for the reimbursement. As you know, I think
that part is being worked on, and so that it should remain open.
Well, we're at the point in this process where we have one more LPC meeting, and we do need to have everything kind of in place for them to be able to make an informed decision. So again, I think the recommendation right now is to put those projects, not get rid of them by any means, but make them eligible for the grant funding program or the downtown improvement program, which does not have to be only for facades. It can be for any downtown improvements, however the parameters are set up. And that gives them an opportunity to still receive some funding without having the sponsorship completely maybe flush out at this point. The LPC is also able to vote on, and Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, but they're able to show their support for a project, even if it's not on the funding list or it won't receive or won't be recommended for funding. They can still show their support, and it could be in the plan as something that the LPC would like to see happen at some point in downtown.
So I have a quick question to follow up. You're telling me that certain funds have to be expended and then by the institution, and then the institution gets reimbursed. If they are put in the grant program, does that become an outright grant, or is that also on the same type of reimbursement?
Dave, I don't know the details of the parameters of the grant program. I would assume it's still reimbursement, but if you could maybe elaborate on how it's worked in other places. I know it has to be a specific program has to be put together for Baldwin, which is still to be determined.
Correct. Even through the fund, the projects would be reimbursement based.
And Karen, just to provide a little bit more context as well, some of the reasoning behind grouping some of those projects together, where we felt that some of these smaller projects that had smaller amounts of funding might actually have a better likelihood of getting funded if they were grouped together as part of the improvement grant fund. So that was kind of part of the strategic thinking behind that suggestion and decision.
Karen, if we have about 16 people here and a few other hands.
I was going to say, if you're ready, I think that's about it if you wanted to move on.
Great. Thanks so much for the comments. We appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Karen. I'll move you back to an attendee. And as Lou just mentioned, we have a pretty good crowd out there. So at this point, if you'd like to make a comment or you have a question, if you could please click the raise hand tool. That'll help us prioritize people who have something to say. And we have a raised hand from Linda Degan. So Linda, I'm going to promote you to a panelist. You'll be able to come in and talk. Linda,
Maybe
you should
unmute Linda.
Yeah, I just, okay.
There we go.
Hi, all. Okay, sorry. I don't know how to work this too good. I actually thought maybe hey, Abby.
You're doing great.
I actually thought I missed the beginning. So if there's other people to talk right now, let them go. And then if I could come back, that would be great.
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, great. Thank you. I want the dog to stop and
No problem.
I just
All right.
didn't know where we were at. I didn't see anybody. Like, I don't see the guests, right? I just see you guys.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Okay, now I know what's happening. Okay, I'll put my hand up again a little bit. Thank you.
All right,
Sure.
Linda, just click the raise hand button again once you're ready and we'll bring you back in.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So once again, if anybody out there, one of the public attendees, if you have a comment or a question, go ahead and click that raise hand button. Okay, we've got Paul Kaplan now. Paul, let me bring you in as a panelist.
Oh, I guess no face. Okay. Hi, can you hear us?
Hmm?
I was asking if you could hear us.
Yes, we can.
We can hear
Hi.
you.
Just wanted to kind of echo what the person previously said. I apologize, I don't remember your name. But in sharing the information, we attended the previous information Zoom session. And in sharing with neighbors and friends what the proposed buildings were, it was just apartment building after apartment building, 500 and something units. And there was a lot of surprise and disappointment, not just from us, but from our friends as well, that there really wasn't a lot of, as was brought up, a lot of chances for some of the smaller businesses to, whether it's the Baldwin Diner, making a nicer sign outside or improving their interior, some of the other smaller existing businesses, or bringing in something for students or art or something like that. It just seemed like it was just all apartment buildings. And it's very disappointing to think that with so much money and so much opportunity, and I get that these are the proposals that came in, but I'm just sharing thoughts that we had and that some of our neighbors and friends had.
Well, also, I'm just curious, do a lot of people like to live right up against the train station or on Grand Avenue? Did you find that?
Summertime.
In general, there's high demand for, we're finding across the region for rental apartments in close proximity to the railroad.
Okay.
It just, as I said, it was just disappointing to see that it was just this redundant trail of apartments and condos, and that's all. Thank you for listening.
Sure.
If you have any comments on it, then like to hear your feedback.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I would just, if you haven't had an opportunity to kind of go through the virtual meeting and look at all the projects, please do so. They're broken into two groups, TOD and placemaking. And as we said earlier, the arts and the branding and marketing are still part of the projects being considered by the LPC. There's also a number of streetscaping projects and pedestrian enhancements, a project along Merrick Road, a green infrastructure project along Brooklyn Avenue, et cetera. So there are some other projects to consider, and I would urge you to go take a look at those as well.
As I said, we did attend the previous Zoom meeting and forwarded the link to other friends of ours. So we did get to review it, and I thank you. I know I'm not saying it's only apartments. I know there are some opportunities. It just seemed proportionately. I think when we heard that all of this money and opportunities were coming into our neighborhood, I think maybe we were envisioning it as the inverse of what was displayed the other night. That's all. Thank you.
Well, be sure to take advantage of the forum that we have for you to, leave comments and sort of express the impact that you think these different projects will have in various ways. So, if the placemaking projects are the ones that you think will be the most impactful, please leave comments to that effect. This forum certainly feeds into the process, but so does that part of the virtual meeting. So please participate there as well.
Great, thank you. And that's on the website. That's on that Hempstead.gov website.
Yeah, the link to the if you back out of the doors that you entered to come in here, the link to the actual virtual meeting room is available via the town's website.
Great, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And thank you for working on this. I didn't mean to just be a naysayer up and down the street, so to speak.
No, not at all. We appreciate the input.
All right, I'll bring you back in as an attendee.
I'm going to provide a quick calculation that I did just now based on those comments. And just so everyone knows who's on the call, the percentage of funding towards placemaking versus some of the transit-oriented and mixed-use development projects is about 1/3, in terms of amount of funding being requested, is about 1/3 placemaking and about 2/3 for TOD, just so everyone is aware of that.
Thanks, Abby.
All right, up next.
Just a quick question to the VHB team can people get into this Zoom conversation without going through the virtual room? Because it almost sounded like the last commenters hadn't been in the virtual room.
Yeah, no, you have to go through the doors in the virtual room to get in.
Okay, great.
Up next, we've got a couple raised hands. First one, we have somebody listed as Janny. I'll bring you in as a panelist. If you wouldn't mind when you get in, just stating your full name for everyone, that'd be great. Okay, you should be able to unmute now and turn on your video if you'd like. Hi, Janny, are you there? Okay, we're unable to hear you, Janny. Looks like you are unmuted though. Give you another moment here. Okay, I wonder if Janny's having some technical difficulties. I'm going to go ahead and mute you for now, and I'm going to bring in our next raised hand. If you are able to figure things out, just go ahead and let us know, and we'll get you in after our next guest. Our next raised hand is Frankie. Frankie, I'm going to bring you in as a panelist. And Frankie, you should be able to unmute and speak.
Yes, hi, how is it? I hope everybody's doing well today. I just want to make a comment. My name is Frankie George from Gala Fresh Farms, one of the businesses in the town. I just want to comment that I understand that a lot of people are worried about these apartment buildings being presented and the future of Baldwin. But I try to look at it on the opposite spectrum. I try to look at it as a positive thing, as an exciting thing that so many people want to invest heavily into Baldwin. I think all of this money being invested into Baldwin is gonna boost, not only my business but all the businesses in the area and the surrounding areas, and I'm excited for it. And I hope we can get a lot of this done. I know all of it won't get done, but if we can get a few of these projects off the ground, along with the pedestrian projects I was seeing there in the virtual room, I think the Baldwin downtown is going to end up looking like a very beautiful zone.
Thank you. Appreciate the comments.
All right, thank you. I'll put you back in as an attendee. We do have another raised hand. Oh, no, the hand went down. Let's check in. Looks like Janny just signed off, so maybe going for a computer restart. If anybody out there has any questions or comments, here's Janny again. Let's try that again. We'll bring you in as a panelist.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Loud and clear.
Oh, good. I was just wondering, I heard that where Breslin is thinking of putting the apartments and the stores on Sunrise where Conway Motors was, where would the exit and entrances to that development be? Would they be on Sunrise and Grand, or would they be coming in and out of Harrison?
Those types of details are typically worked out during a site plan approval process. So at this point, we're still at a conceptual level for the DRI, which is a separate process altogether. So again, that would come later, and there would be public opportunity to provide your feedback once that site plan had been worked out down the road.
I just feel that Harrison is a residential area, and how many apartments were they planning on putting up there that would bring tremendous traffic up and down Harrison Avenue?
The project calls for 200 units as currently proposed.
200 units, and a lot of people have 2 cars, so that's something to consider, I guess, later on.
Yeah, I mean, yes, there'd be a separate approval process that has to go through the town and various other approval agencies. There has been SECRA already completed for the overlay zone in general. So some of those traffic impacts for the whole area have been looked at and examined and analyzed leading up to the approval of the zoning. But yes, there'd be many other approval processes and public opportunities for discussion of potential impacts from a project as the project progresses.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll bring you back as an attendee. And if we have anybody out there who has a question or a comment, go ahead and click the raise hand button. Or if you're feeling shy, you can ask it via the text-based Q&A tool.
One comment before the next speaker comes in. I think we should take the advantage of each person to make sure they're going to the to see the exhibit, because otherwise we're not going to get a lot of input on the, in response that we can rely on to make the decisions in the end.
Yeah, we'll note that for everybody, Dave. Thank you.
Sure.
And we had a couple more people just pop in. If you have a question, up there we go. Elizabeth Olesh, we'll bring you in as a panelist. Just a moment.
I need to unmute myself, start my video. Hi, how are you?
Hi,
So I'm an LPC member, so I'm here for a while. I have a board meeting at 7, but I wanted to be able to hear what community members had to say, and I see this is being recorded, so I'm guessing I'll be able to see the second half of it after. I just wanted to say that I think we really need to look at balancing the projects. I do believe from the start we discussed mixed use development as a good way, a good plan forward. Laura Curran came and talked to us about that, and we looked at some other similar revitalization efforts where that had been very successful, and you can see that, and you can see there are apartments, new apartments in Mineola that are near transit, and I think you said in Patchogue as well, and they're really nice buildings, and it looks like it would be a good mix of the studios and 1 and 2 bedrooms. At the same time, I think it is important to look at the other place-making projects that people want to see. So I just wanted to just go back to that beginning, and that we had spoken about that from the very start. And in fact, at one point, we were a little concerned that we weren't getting the mixed use buildings that we were hoping for. And now it seems like we have an embarrassment of riches. That's all.
Thanks, Liz. We appreciate you coming tonight. And yes, this will definitely be available for you to watch. We'll have all the questions and responses available to the public, in short order.
Thanks, I'll bring you back in as an attendee. And once again, to anybody out there in the general public, first of all, thank you for joining us tonight. And if you'd like to make a comment or you have a question, just click the raise hand button or send us a note via the Q&A tool, and we can reach out and let you speak.
I will just say for all of those, we have about 20 people who are listening in right now. Please, as Dave Capel mentioned, this portion is not the normal public meeting, the normal LPC meeting. So this is only available for Q&A. Please go back out of this, go take a look at all of the information that's out there in each of the projects being considered. And if you have any questions, come back in and please ask them. That's what we're here for tonight.
And fill out the evaluation forms for each one.
Looks like we just had some more people jump in. If you have a question or a comment you'd like to make, go ahead and click the raise hand button in your Zoom window, and we'll allow you to unmute, go on camera. And just a reminder, this just is a big open discussion, so feel free to jump in at any time with a question or a comment. Okay, looks like Linda has another question or comment. Linda, give me just a minute. I'll bring you in as a panelist. Things calmed down there, Linda? Oh, you're muted.
I figured, well, no one else is saying anything, so I'll just jump in again. You know, I always have something to say. So I like Frankie George's comment, because clearly I've been here my whole life and I've been involved in this whole thing from the start, since as you know. I agree, this is fabulous that people are interested in Baldwin. It's changed dramatically since I've been here, which is marvelous. But as I've said, and I'll say again, I am concerned about the amount of residential projects. I think I'm supporting Breslin because I think that is important, because it is at the railroad. I'm concerned about Sunrise and Grand being chaotic. We haven't even had Grand Avenue go to one lane yet, so I don't know what the heck's going to happen there. Michael and Nick, I love them to death. I was flabbergasted, as I told you at the meeting last week, at the size of that project, that in my opinion absolutely has to come down a couple of stories. I would prefer to also see it, the architectural design of it, be more like the community, because it really just doesn't fit in my opinion at all. Merrick Road, I think there's an issue with the town of Hempstead parking lot there. If they're planning on using any of that parking, that's a problem, because our point was to get businesses there. So we don't want to take up any of that parking. Up here near me, I think that might be a little too high also. The old school, Coolidge, that was there, I think is 5 stories. If that kind of matched that, that would be okay. But like everybody's saying, and I have said, I'm just very concerned about the lack of businesses. And I don't hear anybody saying they have connections to anybody. I would expect that Breslin would be able to get some businesses and retail, the mixed use in there. With COVID the way it is, we know we have a problem. There's a big issue, Don, I don't know if you can answer this. The community is extremely concerned about the pilots. And now that Breslin's asking for $2 million of this money, what does that do to that situation?
Well, any pilot's the developer's gonna have to do, and it also, are they gonna go to the Nassau County IDA? What does that have to do with housing? They're gonna have to disclose that to let the residents know, and also the IDA is gonna have an obligation to let the residents know what, if any, impact it will have on its taxes and how to deal with it. You know, you wanna avoid, any confusion, you wanna be clear cut, and they're gonna have an obligation to let the residents know so they get a good, clear picture of this, of all the projects involved, if any at all are going for IDA funds.
Right, but we have the county and the town has the power to say no, correct?
Anybody can submit for an IDA, they have to get approval of the boards. They're independent boards. They could say yes, they could say no. So, and also the residents get an opportunity to be heard in the project too. And I think in this day and age, residents' voices ring very loudly with a lot of these agencies, considering, that taxes are a very sensitive issue, and residents just want to, make sure, that everyone's paying their fair share, and that's all.
Well, we didn't fare too well with the BZA with the Toyota property on Sunrise Highway. That was the most insulting event, when they literally sat at that meeting and said how horrible it was that they did not follow the rules. I'm a rule follower. So, they followed nothing, and the BZA agreed, yet they turned around and extended the time. So we're not feeling like we have a lot of support on our side for these issues. So just if everyone needs to kind of keep that in mind. I also want to thank everybody since the beginning of this. It's been a little confusing. I wasn't on the LPC, but I was there the whole time. I felt like there was a little of this confusion for everybody. I, at all of these meetings, literally want to stand up and say, somebody say something, because the LPC often kind of sat there and I felt like they were a little confused about their role. But it's great that we were offered this. Definitely something will be done, but I think the LPC needs to be very concerned about the residential portion of this. And I think that's my biggest, just my biggest complaint at this time, because we wanted businesses, and I'm praying that somebody will come in, and mixed use is fine, but we have plenty of empty properties now. So it'll be a new empty property unless these developers can say to us, we've contracted with this one, we're bringing in this one. And that would be what everyone and the community and the residents would want to hear. So that's all for now. I'm sure I'll chime in again.
All right, well, thank you. We'll move you back to the attendee side, but raise your hand if anything else comes up.
Sure, I will.
Okay, and for those of you just joining us, we're just going with kind of an open house format tonight. If you have any questions or you'd like to make a comment, go ahead and click the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom window, and we can bring you in as a panelist so you can speak with everybody. Okay, we have a raised hand from Alex. I'll go ahead and bring you in as a panelist.
There we go. Hey guys.
Alex.
Can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm. Loud and clear.
Great, thank you. And just want to thank you all for doing all this. I'm a Baldwin resident, and my name is Alex Jacobson. I'm also one of the sponsors of the Grand Avenue project, which is on the corner, basically the first building in from Merrick Road and Grand Avenue. So I wanted to get some feedback from the meeting last week when this project was originally proposed, and I know it was one of the later submissions. There was questions about specifically the parking, and I wanted the community to be clear on that this property has the 124 parking spaces in the rear of it that are currently underutilized. If you're a Baldwin resident like I am, that's at this property on a regular basis, you would know that most of those parking spots sit empty. Our proposal to create mixed use, which is a retail on the first floor and 20 apartments above, I think is perfectly in line with both DRI and what they're trying to accomplish, which is adding the retail and the residential together. I'm here to answer any questions and basically address some of those concerns. I think actually Supervisor Clavin said it best as, being creative and utilizing that parking lot for residential uses in the evening when most people need it to park overnight, and then having it available when most people go to work, whether they be using public transportation, the Long Island Railroad, the bus stop that's right in front of that property, leaving it available for retail during the day. So I've been a Baldwin resident for, I guess, 13 or 14 years now, and I hear the concerns. I'm also a licensed real estate broker since 2001 in Oceanside. So I've represented a lot of both buyers and sellers in the Baldwin and Oceanside in the local community. So I hear that there is concern of, these residential units being built. But as a developer and a real estate professional, I could assure you that, these proposals of 500 units, there's probably only a fraction of them that are ever going to actually get a shovel in the ground. In addition to that, our retail stores, the reason you see them suffering is there's not enough density to support them. So if you add, 200 units, 300 units, 500 units, you will also spur what a lot of you are concerned about, which is I am concerned about, is places to shop. So these businesses will flourish after there's people that will shop in these businesses. So as you've seen in all these other communities, and Mineola and Westbury and Rockville Center, that have added these residential components, again, close to the train, not to congest the area with traffic and cars, that it will bring the businesses back to life. So I applaud all your efforts. I can't wait to see shovels in the ground in and around Baldwin. Again, as a resident for a long time, I think that we put in a project that isn't too big, it isn't too small. We know that our piece there on the corner of American Grand, it's not the biggest piece, and we're certainly not adding 200 units, we're adding 20 units. But if we don't get approvals, that piece will never be redeveloped because it wouldn't be financially feasible to redevelop it. So I appreciate the DRI, I appreciate the initiatives of the town of Hempstead in finally bringing this forward. And I look forward to answering any questions anyone has on this project.
Alex, thank you for being on and for offering us the context of your project. We appreciate it. I think just for the purposes of kind of controlling the room a little bit, we probably won't have a back and forth with each of the project sponsors. I want to make sure if we were going to do that, we would give that opportunity to everybody. But certainly, if you hear anything about your project that you need to address down the road, feel free to raise your hand again. But we do appreciate the comments, and thank you for putting in an application.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
All right, Alex, well, I'll bring you back in as an attendee. And we have a raised hand from Karen. Karen, I'll bring you in.
You may need to unmute yourself, Karen.
Thank you. Hopefully now you can.
We can hear you now.
Okay, I understand and I know the property that Alex is talking about. And I would just hope that there would be some efforts to at least put some on-site parking or something to ameliorate taking out 20 whole spots out of the 124 that are part of the town of Hempstead parking lot, because I think we also need to make sure we have room for any other stores that might be in there, which are currently, it's kind of a quiet area, so that's why it's being underutilized. So I would like to just make that comment that hopefully he may be able to work in a little bit of some parking to mitigate it. Thank you.
Karen.
All right, thank you, Karen. And we've got some more raised hands now. Up next, we'll bring in, I believe Linda's hand was up first, and then we'll bring in Elizabeth after Linda.
Okay. Whoop. Okay.
All right, we can hear you, Linda.
Gotcha, Linda.
I told you I'd be back. So I just have for Alex, I actually had a question for him if he's still there and is allowed to answer. I disagreed with the density issue because there's 32,000 people in Baldwin, so we need to get the businesses. People will shop here because that's all I've been complaining about for 30 years. But I'm wondering if he has any commercial connections for the retail portion of his property.
I mean, I'll respond quickly because again, Linda, I think we just want to be careful about, what I said earlier. So
yeah,
but I don't think part of the application did include specific tenants or anything like that. just so you're aware, I mean, at this conceptual stage, as you know, through the process, that generally wouldn't, that's normal, that's typical. So I don't know if he's talking to anybody, but.
Okay, yep. Thank you. I'll be back.
Thanks, Linda.
Yep.
Okay, up next, we've got Elizabeth. I'll bring you in as panelist again.
Hi, you can hear me now? Yes?
We have you, Liz.
So first, I want to say thank you to Alex. I did appreciate his comments. And 124 spaces does seem like a good amount of spaces. However, I just think we need to remember, and again, this is just a comment, and saying, well, you know, people are gone during the day at work. There are a lot of other patterns to work. And I think there are going to be a lot more people who are working from home, maybe from this point forward. There are also a lot of people who work in shifts that may be at any hours of the day, and they would expect to be able to come home and park their car when they get home. That's all.
Thanks, Liz.
Thank you. Alex again, I'm going to bring you in as a panelist.
Hey guys, thank you again for this opportunity, and hopefully I can answer just a few of those quick questions. First and foremost, being a real estate broker on the South Shore, I do have contacts and some potential retail and restaurant tenants for that first floor. So we would be building it to suit, and this is conceptual if it all was approved. But we certainly have retail and have rented retail space in the past, and would look to do so as soon as the new facility, the new building is built. Having said that, a quick question, maybe some of you are not familiar with the piece or how much current space is being utilized for parking. As I said, with 124 cars in the rear, the current existing building is about 6,200 or 6,300 square feet. And what we're looking to do is just add floors on top of that. There's really no parking currently at this location. In the rear of this building, there may be 3 or 4 spots. So it's not as if we're taking a 2,000 square foot building and looking to build this 8,000 square foot building. We're building on top of our existing structure, and being the fact that all of this parking is underutilized, we're not expecting that all 20 units will have cars with the proximity with the bus stop right in front of this building, as well as the Long Island Railroad just a few blocks north. We are not expecting to overburden that parking lot at all, being the fact that it's underutilized today. And again, with this current site, there presently is not any parking other than, like I said, 3 or 4 spots in the rear for loading and unloading. So we're not looking to over occupy a lot. We're just looking to build on top of the existing structure. So I hope that clarifies our the parking questions and concerns. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex.
And once again, to everybody who's joined us, first off, thanks for being with us tonight. If you'd like to add a comment or have a question, go ahead and click the raise hands tool at the bottom of your Zoom window, and we can let you come on as a panelist and speak. Okay, we have a raised hand from Paul. I will bring you in again as a panelist.
I'm just curious, is the funding for, let's say, as an example, the Baldwin Coach Diner, is that strictly facade, or can that be for internal improvements and other businesses as well?
So the Coach Diner had originally reached out with an individual application towards the beginning of this process, and it was for LED lighting and updated signage, I believe. The way that it is structured at the moment is that the Coach Diner program would be built into the Downtown Improvement Grant Fund. And so there are a number of activities that are eligible for funding under that fund. And the Coach Diner would then apply through that grant fund. So that could include facade improvements, interior fit outs, sustainability upgrades, a whole range of things purposefully meant to be flexible to allow local businesses to decide for themselves really what they need. But initially it was for LED lighting and updated signage.
Okay, thank you for that.
Just another question relating to them. Are they one of the companies that does not, they're still searching for, I don't know what the terminology was, but like, I guess you have to have someone who's gonna vouch for the funds until the grant funds come through? Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, but they since they would fall under the Downtown Improvement Grant Fund, they don't need a project sponsor specifically through the DRI process. So the sponsor in this case would be the town of Hempstead, who would administer that grant program to the various businesses that would apply for funding.
I see. And so all of that was what, I think it was you, someone was saying that was one of the benefits to kind of bundling all of these projects together under that umbrella so that they could qualify for benefits such as the sponsoring.
That's exactly right. And in some cases, this is a reimbursement program. So in some cases, smaller businesses aren't able to necessarily take on that upfront cost expenditure and be a project sponsor. That still is a factor in the Downtown Improvement Grant Fund. But this at least allows them the flexibility to go through this fund with the support of Town of Hempstead.
Wonderful. Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Linda has the hand raised. Linda will bring you up.
Surprise. Stop, Lovey.
Hello again.
Oh, hello again. So let me ask you guys something. Gracie, stop, Lovey. What's the time frame on this stuff? Like, what do you think, shovel in the ground and we see a building on any of these things? Rob at Malkin's is figuring in his project, if everything goes smoothly, he's telling me 2025. What does VHB and the state and everybody think? Like, what's the, how does this usually go?
I don't know if there is a usual or a typical in these kind of scenarios, Linda. Each project's going to move on its own pace. Each one has a different approval process after DRI that they have to go through. And each one's in a different position right now on where they are. If they're demoing a building, do they need do they need remediation? Are they building on top of something that exists? So each one is completely different. So there's really no accurate way to say that. They each have to just kind of get through the process, and they're going to get through the process with the support of the LPC and the available DRI funding, or they won't have the support of the LPC and the DRI funding, and they'll decide if they want to continue through that process or not.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure.
I'll be back.
I see there's a question that was posed in the Q&A, so I'll read it while we're waiting for others to possibly raise their hand. The question came from Shane Brogan and asked if we could get a copy of the material in the virtual room so that it can be shared and reviewed offline. So Shane, just like every other LPC meeting and every other meeting we've had to date, all of the materials are posted on the town's website after the meeting. And they'll be available to review at your leisure and download if desired. And
also, just so you're aware, this virtual meeting room will be open for for 2 weeks following this evening's live Q&A. So we encourage you to come back if you'd like to. Let others know this material will be up for the next 2 weeks, so to be able to look through it, at your convenience.
I think Matt is stepping away just for a moment, so we'll keep an eye out for any hands that are raised. At the moment, we don't have any additional questions, so we'll hang tight until we do. Christy, we do have a hand raised.
Yep. So we have Michael Palios. So Mike, I'm going to let you talk. You should be able to talk, and I'm just going to promote you to a panelist as well. He should be there shortly.
Hi.
Hi, Michael.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, you're good.
Hi. So for anyone I haven't had the pleasure of meeting, I'm Michael Palios, one of the sponsors of the 775 Brooklyn Avenue proposal. It's been really helpful just hearing different perspectives from the community. And I think given where we are in the process, it probably would make sense to just zoom out a little bit and remind ourselves of kind of what the kind of stated objectives of this program were in the first place. And if it helps with anyone's kind of thought process, just to share a little bit of our thought process as property owners in terms of how we tackle this. So, first and foremost, our understanding is that it's transit-oriented development, right? So the idea being that if you can revitalize the area in and around the transit hub, that it provides the necessary spark and catalyst to drum up business, to increase pedestrian foot traffic, to attract some new amenities for residents, to beautify the neighborhood. So I don't think anyone is in disagreement that those are all worthwhile aspirations. I do take the point raised by several residents around a potential glut of residential inventory coming onto the market. I share in those concerns, and it might sound kind of ironic coming from me with one of the larger proposals on the docket, but to a point made earlier by one of the previous speakers, the two kind of go hand in hand. There is a case to be made as a property owner that to ensure the economic viability of a project, the math needs to work, right? And so we will always have to balance kind of, for mixed use especially, how do we kind of calibrate residential offering versus retail space versus office space, et cetera. And so we come up on a best efforts basis with what we think is going to thread that needle between economic viability while also serving the objectives of the initiative. And I think it's that latter point that is especially important, because we are talking about a lot of money. We're talking about a fairly sizable impact to the community. I am a Baldwinite, born and raised, and so I, like everyone else on this call, want to see this thing succeed. As it relates to 775 Brooklyn, the proposal is just that, right? We're not married to any particular element of the proposal, be it the aesthetics of the facade, the number of floors, the number of parking spaces. I mean, this was our intent to kind of get the conversation started, and I think we've come up with what is a fairly reasonable proposal, but subject to further discussion. I mean, we're not opposed to bringing it down to 5 floors, for instance, or to rethinking, the look and feel of the building or what the pedestrian space in front of the building could look like. But what I do think is important, and for the folks in VHB, I would encourage you guys. I did notice in the virtual room that there were some elements of our proposal that were lacking. So the first and foremost was the linkage to the Baldwin Business Center, which I think is an important development and which residents should be aware exists. And it's a prime example of the sort of a community amenity that we would want to put out there alongside the residential inventory that's on offer. So, and two, I think it was Paul Kaplan, and I don't know the lady's name who was speaking with him. For anyone who dialed into the previous LPC meeting, I would encourage you to have a closer look at the meetings that were posted in the virtual room, because they do go into more detail. I think the LPC meeting was just the single drawing of each of the proposals, which again, at least speaking selfishly, perhaps, I don't think the drawings alone do our proposal justice. I think there's a lot more that our proposal brings to the table in terms of what's on offer to the community. So I would encourage everybody to have a look. And certainly if the LPC is going to be considering community feedback through that virtual room as an important input into the decision-making process, I think it's only fair that those proposals kind of accurately reflect what we as the owners have put forward as the proposal. So, just in summary, to address some of the comments, we're not here to sort of force, our own vision on anybody. I think we want this to be a collaborative effort. We want the community to feel great about it. We feel great about it, and that's not to say that we're, steadfastly sticking to any particular element of the proposal. So if the LPC and the community at large feel that things need to be tweaked, then let's talk. That's what we're here to do. So I'll leave it at that, and I'll also just say thank you to everyone on the call and to the LPC in particular for the time and helping us navigate, especially in this bizarre year, trying to see this thing through to the finish line, because I do think that great things lie ahead, and it's credit to this group that we've gotten this far. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. And up next, first off, we have a question in the Q&A from Kimberly Malone asking, for the revolving loan fund, what is the minimum or maximum amortization time frame?
I don't know, Dave. I'm not sure that that's been worked out yet at this point. I think each community who's looking to do a fund would work on those parameters. Later on as it kind of gets fleshed out. But I don't know if David, Ashton, if there's any feedback from other communities that you're aware of as far as, basically how long the loans typically go.
Sorry, just one quick clarification as well. This fund is being set up as a grant fund. It's actually, you can set it up as either or, but through kind of discussions with the community and with the LPC, we've set this up as a grant fund, particularly based on kind of feedback that we've gotten from other communities that grants are often or can be kind of more successful in this context. So just to add that to the conversation.
Thanks, Abby.
Thanks. Our next raised hand is from Isaiah. Isaiah, we'll bring you in as a panelist.
Hey, Matt, just 1 sec. I think David might have been trying to say something, but
oh, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Was on mute. Unless I'm wrong, David.
David, we don't have any sound from you.
Yeah, for some reason, David, we're seeing you, but we're not hearing.
Hello?
Hi, Isaiah, sorry, I didn't mean to bring you in. David still has something to finish up, but we'll get to you in just a moment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, hopefully you can hear me now.
Loud and clear.
I was just agreeing with Abby. I think that that's the answer to the question. If it's not, please ask it again. I wasn't exactly clear on what the question was related to amortization, because I was in the grant fund frame of mind rather than loan fund. But if in a grant fund context that the question means something different, please ask it again.
Thanks. Hi, Isaiah. I think the floor is yours.
Hi, good evening. How is everyone? And thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. I'm the owner of 1891 through 1895 Grand Avenue Inwood Property Holdings for the Bayview Terrace Apartments on Grand Avenue. And we had been working with the Baldwin Civic Association and other different people in Baldwin to get this project brought to bear. We have had many discussions in parking, and at the last meeting, I think there was some hesitation or some remarks made as to whether underground parking was feasible in that area. And I just want to assure the supervisor and everyone else on the board that we've done numerous studies, borings, soil samples to say that we can put underground parking there. And I think we've submitted the findings to VHB to kind of reinforce what we were saying about the underground parking. And as I said, we've sat with the Baldwin Civic Association, kind of had different meetings with them as to what way we could bring this project to bear without being an effect on the parking in the Grand Avenue area, which is very limited where the parking is there. So we felt this was the best way to address to get the project built and providing parking that would sustain both commercial shopping as well as residential. And that's really it. I appreciate you giving me the time to speak, and I just want to assure everyone that we thought this through very diligently.
Thanks, Isaiah. And we appreciate that you did follow up and send us some additional information showing us the level of detail and analysis that you've done to date. So I think we are in receipt of that, Abby. And again, it goes to, I'll just mention again for those who might be joining us, this is, we're here as part of the DRI process, and a lot of things that you're describing are things that are really further considered during site plan approval and, the rest of the entitlement process. But it does go certainly to the overall, standing of the project. And so we do appreciate all the information, and it'll help the LPC make their determination on which projects they want to recommend for funding.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And once again, for everybody who's out there, thanks first for joining us tonight. If you'd like to make a comment or you have a question, click the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom window, and we can promote you to a panelist so you can take part in the conversation. Okay, Linda has a hand raised.
Clearly, I don't do well with silence. I feel bad that you're all just sitting there. I just want to talk to you. I just want to thank Michael. I know him and Nick have Baldwin's best interests at heart. And I really appreciate his honesty and his forthrightness, that he is so willing to listen, be open-minded about that project, to agree that there are tweaks and things that can be done if, the community is so concerned about its height. So I fully support, I don't have a vote, on the LPC, but I fully support that project with those few little tweaks. But I just love his honesty, his communication with everybody, and his just forthrightness about, and he doesn't even have to prove that his heart is here in Baldwin. I mean, it's clear when he speaks about the project. And I just wanted to say, I think that's wonderful, and I really appreciate that and absolutely support that project.
Thanks, Linda.
Bye-bye again.
See you soon, I'm sure.
I'm sure you will.
Thank you.
All right, up next, we have a raised hand from somebody listed as PBC. So we'll bring you in, but if you don't mind just stating your full name so we know who you are once you come in as a panelist.
Hi, my name is Patrice Williams. I've lived in Baldwin for about 10 years. We had a Pathmark supermarket and that went away. Are there any plans to bring a supermarket into Grand Avenue? I think it's something that's really needed in the community. A lot of people have to go outside of Baldwin for food shopping, as an option. So that means that a lot of dollars are going out of the community. Yes, there's Gala Fresh, there's Fruit Tree, but that Pathmark was a really important hub. So I was just wondering if anyone has any input on that.
Yeah, you know what, I'll take it with this one. We've actually reached out to a number of different stores, chain stores, larger size, to try and, show them that this would be a great location with a real necessity for it. We've had one or two that have expressed some interest, so we're actively working in the town because I recognize, I know the area all too well. There's a need for, some sort of shopping at that location. So we are trying to entice and reaching out not only to the bigger chain stores, some of the smaller ones, as well as some of the supporters. They employ a lot of local individuals, and we've reached out to a lot of the union membership to express that this is a great location. It had a significant store there for a very long period of time, and it's a natural fit. So I get what you're saying. I just want you to know at the town we're trying to work with it. And it's in conjunction, you'd want that to be successful with this project with, potentially what could happen here. So, I understand, we're with you, and we're actively trying to bring somebody in to get in that location. And if we do, trust me, we'll be the first to let you know.
Okay. I just also have another question. Businesses like Panera, Chipotle, how can we attract those types of businesses to this area? If you go from Valley Stream, Lynbrook, Rockville Center, there's, a Panera, there's a Starbucks. I'm very thankful that we got the Starbucks recently. It's clearly very popular because that line is, always backed up onto Sunrise Highway. We could probably use a second one, which would be great. But once you hit Baldwin and then Freeport, you don't have a Panera. And as soon as you get into Merrick, there's a Panera, there's a Starbucks. So I'm just wondering, how can we attract more diversified businesses to the area? Because people, again, are going out. If I'm going to Panera, I'm going to Rockville Center. And I'm right here in my community. I want to spend my dollars in my community. So I was just wondering about that.
I think it's really a combination. This is this sort of project that can really spur that. But it's, you want the community to outreach it, and you've seen it. You've seen some changes, with bigger stores hitting Baldwin. I mean, I grew up in Valley Stream. I remember Grand Avenue was just, Grand Avenue, and there's nothing there. You have a couple of the bigger chain stores. I think I was at the Starbucks in Baldwin the other day. It's great, and there was an awesome line waiting out of it. I love nothing better than waiting on lines all the time. But I think with the success of this sort of development, you'll see those chain stores take interest and want to invest in the community. So that's what I think is the real benefit of this initiative by the state and everything, because it pays dividends. The investment here turns long term in many different levels.
And is there a particular time frame for the project? I know it's been in the works.
Lou, I'm going to kick that over to you.
Thank you.
No problem.
Sure. And Abby or Christy, we were just talking about, actually, this would be a good opportunity to kill two birds with one stone, because there's also a question from Alex in the Q&A regarding when the panel will choose the product they recommend for DRI funding. So why don't we just go over the schedule for a moment and give both you guys a better idea of that.
Thank you so much.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of the remainder of the DRI planning process, we have this meeting, live Q&A tonight, obviously. This virtual meeting room will stay open for the next 2 weeks to give members of the community the opportunity, as much opportunity as possible, to provide feedback on the projects that have been proposed. And then we will have the final LPC meeting where the local planning committee members will be making their final full list of recommended projects to send to the state for funding. That's going to happen on October 14th. So we encourage anyone interested in finding out which projects will make it into the final investment plan to definitely attend that meeting. And then there'll be a little bit, about 2-week turnaround for the consultant team to then go ahead and just finalize the final investment plan on behalf of the LPC. So that's kind of we'll finish up around the end of October, and that will be kind of formalize the end of the LPC and DRI planning process. And then from there, the final investment plan gets handed over to the state, and they have their kind of internal review process. So I'm going to actually kick that over to Dave to talk about what the time frame is in terms of state decision making.
Thank you.
Right. So sure. Not a lot of specific information on the state's decision making process. At this point, the state is still very focused on the addressing the COVID virus, and obviously there's this process used to have a very regimented timeline, and that was disrupted this year because of the virus, and the whole process was put on pause. So it used to be the case that the planning portion of the process, which Abby just spoke of, ended in March, and then the state would do their review of the project and would make announcements in the summertime following that end of March submission. This year, at this point, we really don't have a timeline for those project announcements.
Okay.
All right. Well, Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Gonna bring you back as an attendee. Have a great night.
Thank you.
And once again, if anybody out there has a comment or a question, go ahead and click the raise hand button. We can reach out to you, bring you in as a panelist. And just a reminder, this is an open house format, so if you have a question or a comment, feel free to jump in anytime. Just click that raise hand button. Thanks.
Linda has graciously let us know that the Yankees are winning. Thank you, Linda.
Let's go Mets.
No need for the Red Sox score, Lou. That's okay.
Yes, Matt, we weren't intending on giving it to you.
Once again, anybody out there in the general public, if you'd like to comment or have a question, please go ahead and click the raise hand button and jump into the conversation at any time.
Don't everybody talk at once.
Dave, does this Ferris wheel go around at all? I've been kind of wondering about this one. Can you make that a little, can it go around in the video? Because I really do love this backdrop you have today. And by the way, my kids love going out there, and I tell them, I know you, and they don't believe me. You're like a rock star in our house. I just want you to know that.
A rock star in every house.
We do have a question in the Q&A from Kimberly Malone asking, are businesses other than those that have already self-identified able to apply for the Baldwin revolving grant program?
So the answer is yes, absolutely. The ones that were identified so far are just potential applicants to give an idea of the types of projects that are interested. But absolutely, if there's a project that comes up later, we urge you to apply.
Hey, Jenny has a raised hand. We'll bring you in as a panelist. Hey, Jenny, you should be able to unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Is there any time, do you know when there'd be any, is there any time set that they might start doing something, do some construction or something?
Thanks
Would it be years from now, or would it be within a year or so?
Yeah, I mean, this came up a little earlier, so I'll just kind of refresh what we said. I think each of the projects will go through their own approval process after the DRI. Again, this process is to identify which projects should be recommended for New York State DRI funding, but each project still has to go through the normal town approval process. So again, each one will go on their own time frame. So it's hard to really give you, it's impossible, honestly, to give you a direct time frame for shovels in the ground for any or all the projects.
But you don't know if it would be within a year, or you think it'd be much after that?
It's really almost impossible to say. It depends on how their approval process plays out, after the DRI process is over.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we've got two raised hands. We'll bring in Michael, and then following up, we'll bring in Linda. Michael, I'll bring you in as a panelist.
Hey guys.
Hi, Michael.
Just figure while we've got the time, I was going to ask this question offline, but maybe others on the line would be interested as well. So just following on my previous comment around making modifications to our existing proposals, what will the LPC's engagement with property owners be going forward? Meaning if the LPC is broadly supportive of a project, but wants to see some tweaks here and there, Will there be some window of time where we kind of come together to talk through those and try to reach consensus, or would some sort of conditional approval be granted subject to certain changes? Like, how does that process work?
So I think just playing off the rest of the LPC process and the DRI process moving forward, the LPC has one final meeting where they will actually vote on the entire group of projects that they'll recommend for funding, including funding amounts for each project. After that, the LPC is not necessarily involved in a formal basis on in the rest of the entitlement process. Obviously, that would go through the town and the other agencies.
Okay, so is it fair to say that approval is effectively then binary, meaning if the LPC has objections, taking our project, for instance, let's use the number of floors as an example. If the LPC says, yeah, project looks good for the most part, but we just can't get our heads around 7 floors, we think that's too much, would it then deny the project in its entirety on the basis that the proposal currently states 7 floors, or would there be some sort of back and forth to say, we like it, we think it's 95% of the way there, but we think it should really be 5 floors, and so let's modify that accordingly? Like, how does that back and forth actually play out?
And David, jump in if I'm wrong, but the LPC wouldn't be able to modify the specifics of a project application. They can certainly provide their feedback and provide their comments, but they're voting on what's been submitted as far as how much they would recommend for that particular project, or if they would recommend that project for DRI funding.
That's correct. Yeah, I mean, the types of things that I think you're talking about, Michael, are really things that would be taken up in a local approval process. So I think it's been articulated through this process that a number of the private development projects require local approvals, and that process is set up to address some of the things that you're speaking of, and that's really outside the scope of DRI. So I think it's DRI is really just another part of a financing package of a public or a private project. So the DRI process was really set up to react to proposals that are submitted, not to necessarily negotiate them per se, or the details of them, which is really more of a local process rather than a state one within the DRI context.
I see. So now, I guess as a follow-up question to that, given that the demand outstrips the supply as far as budget dollars are concerned, it stands to reason that the LPC will need to push back on some subset of proposals to be able to back into the 9 million number. And will it be the case that some projects are just, meaning they either get through with the funding they requested or they don't get through at all? Or would there be is there a scenario where partial funding could be given to every project that's been put forward, but it's prorated as the LPC deems appropriate?
Well, one of the issues with trying to prorate projects, either sort of through the LPC, sort of the planning part of the process, or when the decisions get to the state, is that we rely on project sponsors to put forward, in a private project sense, what the gap is. So if then the LPC or the state starts changing those numbers, one might inadvertently make a project that was feasible with the amount requested infeasible.
Right.
So we want to avoid that. So if projects were identified sort of early in the process, and there was a desire for a number to come down, there may have already been back and forth with a project sponsor to say, can you do this project with less, or can you do this part of the project and not that part of the project? And sort of there's a little bit of opportunity to massage those projects earlier on in the process. At this point, we're kind of at the end of the process, so that's harder. I would remind you and others that we do ask the LPC to recommend projects to the state that are a bit above 9.7 million, because the state wants some flexibility in decision making as to which projects they would like to fund through DRI, and also projects do fall off. They get other funding, they're withdrawn, they don't go forward for one reason or another. So we want to be sure that we're able to award and deploy the full 9.7 within the community. But when the decisions get to the state, we do not, only in a very limited circumstance would we cut a project request.
Got it. And if you can humor just one final question. So getting back to the timeline, Abby, that you had kindly walked us through earlier. So anyone submitting a proposal should expect to hear back from the LPC kind of in that late October, early November timeframe. And then we just sit tight until we hear the outcome of the state's review? Or do we not hear anything until it's gone through the full sausage factory and we get the final answer at the end?
So at the final LPC meeting, they will vote on the kind of full list of projects that they are recommending to go forward to the state. So at that meeting, you'll have an understanding of which projects are making it into the final investment plan. From that point on, there is a wait period from when the final investment plan is submitted to the state and when the state makes their decision on which projects they would like to put the 9.7 million towards.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, Michael.
Matt, we do have a question in the Q&A. Why don't we address that one first?
Sure. Jimmy Guzman asks, will there be money in the grant for environmentally conscious materials or products, i.e. solar panels, rainwater containment use, or environmentally friendly heating and ventilation systems? Can we or do we have an obligation to lower our carbon footprint?
So, Abby, if you look like you were going to say something, by all means.
No, I just wanted to point out two projects that we do have in a varying degrees that do somewhat address that question. So the project at 800 Merrick Road, which I encourage you to take a look at, is in our virtual meeting room right now. That project would be, the funding would go towards sustainability measures implemented at the site, which is actually an existing building that is being renovated currently. So there's a list of what the funding would go towards. I think that includes, solar panels, EV charging stations, and several other kind of sustainability measures implemented into that development project. The other piece of it is as part of the Downtown Improvement Grant Fund, energy efficiency and sustainability implementation measures are eligible activities under that improvement grant as currently proposed. So that is another avenue that a project sponsor could kind of look to achieve some sustainability measures. Otherwise, I think those are the two that have been kind of explicit about implementing sustainability measures. Some of the developers have talked about, energy efficient appliances and things of that nature. So certainly it's something that developers and project sponsors are thinking about, but those are kind of the two that come to mind.
Thanks.
All right, we go back to Linda, who has her hand raised. We'll bring you in again.
Oops, hello again. So to Michael's point, which is an excellent point, actually, I'm glad he said that. My question, reminds me though, is about American Grand, because I'm gonna forget. But, so I fully support, if he's got no option, because now it has to be presented in that manner with 7 stories. I mean, I think the LPC should absolutely support him. What happens if his project gets approved, but because he has listened to the community's input, he wants to lower it a couple of stories, which then won't require all of that money? We lose that money? Is that what happens with that? And then the Grand and Merrick thing, it's so far off of my head now. Is that part of the DRI straightening out that whole mess down there? Because that obviously has to be approved, or is that the county again or something? I'm confused about that now.
So yeah, both questions. First, on Merrick Road, there is a project for Merrick Road pedestrian and safety enhancements. The county is the sponsor, but they are seeking DRI funding. That's in part of the downtown placemaking and walkability group of projects. And the other question, I think, goes back to what David said, which is, the state looks to have more than 9.7 in DRI funding recommended, so that when things happen and projects change as they go through the approval process, we can still make sure, the state can still make sure that that entire 9.7 goes into Baldwin where it was designed to go.
So then that money would, so say if Michael didn't need 3.4 million and he needed 2.9 to lower the project, to cooperate with the community, if that's what they chose to do, then we would still have that money. It would go somewhere else.
So this exact scenario is not one that I can readily harken back to a circumstance we've had in DRI, but certainly projects change in a variety of different ways. And so there would not be the intent to say, if a project, as it was articulated in the plan, changes to some extent as it goes through public approvals, that all of a sudden the DRI money goes away. That would certainly not be the case. If a project sponsor said through local approvals or because of community input, the project evolved and we don't need as much money anymore as we had requested, then we would probably seek, that would be an interesting outcome. I'm not sure that'd be one we've encountered before, but we would certainly seek to redeploy that money in the community in some way. It wouldn't typically go away. We would certainly look to opportunities to redeploy the money.
Okay, no, that's great to know, and I think that's important for Michael to know if he was concerned about it.
Thanks, Linda.
You're welcome.
Matt, we do have a question in the Q&A.
Yep. Pete asks, excuse me. Good evening, everyone. I missed the main meeting. I looked at the proposed developments and all of the buildings seem enormous. Is such large-scale construction in a small village like Baldwin necessary? This will result in increased traffic congestion all along the Grand Avenue corridor. Baldwin is a small suburban hamlet. Can any of it be scaled down a bit so it may better fit the character of this town?
So I think, again, just to reiterate the process, the last part is really the question, which is, can these projects be scaled down? That's not what the LPC, that's outside the scope of the DRI. The DRI is here to recommend funding to projects as they're submitted, and then they go through their approval process at the local level. Can they be scaled down is up to that process. It's just outside the scope of the DRI. But the LPC is just is here to review the projects as submitted. We have another comment or question in the Q&A.
Yep. This one asks, what about the Pergament building, northwest corner of Grand and Merrick? Possibly it can be incorporated into the proposed 20 apartment building next door.
Again, I think, the LPC is here voting on what's been submitted. I don't know if that was the case necessarily, but these are local site plan approval type of comments that, you would typically bring up during those processes, which have yet to occur, and there's still opportunity to do so.
Thanks, Lou. And just a reminder that if you have a question or you'd like to add a comment, just go ahead and click the raise hand button.
just another reminder, since we have about 15 to 20 minutes left of the live Q&A, for all those who may have joined us in the very beginning, I've noticed a number of you have been here this entire time, and we appreciate that. Make sure you do back out and take a look at the virtual meeting room, as Dave Capel mentioned earlier. Make sure that you're filling out those surveys and providing your feedback, so we can relay that feedback to the LPC to help them inform and guide their final decision.
And then a comment from Karen saying the buildings have different owners.
I think that's in reference to the question about the Pergament building. So that is a consideration as to why someone would submit an application just on the site that they have control over.
Correct. Looks like we do have another hand raised.
Yep, and a question from PBC. I'm sorry, I forgot your name from before. If the LPC approves the project, will the large size of the structures be factored into the approval?
The LPC will consider the project as proposed and submitted by the applicants and the project sponsors. If the project changes after that during the local approval process, that is the appropriate time for that to occur.
Thanks, Lou. And David Roll has a hand raised. David, I'll bring you in as a panelist.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Dave.
I have been a Baldwin resident my whole life, class of 2003, and my parents have been there since 1980, I think 1980 or 1978. And I definitely know what everyone's sentiment is about that corner where the wedding plaza used to be, and it's been vacant forever. But that's not my question. I just wanted to mention, I had to mention that that's like the eyesore. My actual question is in regards to all the municipal parking lots over by St. Luke's, and also the parking lot that's over by St. Christopher across the street. I was wondering, has the town done any parking studies to see the peak hours of occupancy of, during businesses? Because I know that the churches would use those spaces during the weekends traditionally. And then I was wondering if there's a parking study to see that the current tenants, because tenants are on leases usually, they come in and out. I was wondering if perhaps the parking was still representative of the occupancy that those current strip of retail stores are supporting, or perhaps they are underutilized. I was just wondering if anyone had done an actual study on that so we could see that data. And then secondly, tying into that, I also used to take lessons, guitar lessons over at New World Music for about 10 years. And I could tell you that there's some like alleys that lead in from that St. Luke's parking lot to Grand Avenue that feed a lot of those stores. And those walkways are not really safe. They're not really well lit. They're usually flooded or dirty if there's rain. And I was just wondering if, I know that we're looking to enhance the pedestrian experience along Grand Avenue, but what about some of those tributary streets or walkways? Because I know sometimes they're used as active driveways. I was just wondering if that's something that perhaps the town had looked into, investigated to make it a little more inviting and more likely that people will park there and then walk up to those shops. So those are my questions and commentary. Thank you.
Thanks. Supervisor, do you want to comment on the traffic studies? I'm not sure we could answer that one.
Yeah, I can't tell you right now that they were been done in the last few years. It's something that if there's a request, we could take a look at it. I think there's also the idea of when the developments are being done, the studies that are going to be done as a requisite for doing these projects. But it's a nice thought, and I'll take it over, and I'll see if one of our departments will take a look at those flows. And if you could do me a favor, just on the town website, if you could send me an email regarding those alleyways and the lighting. That is something I could take a look at, see if that's either town or the property owner, and maybe we could find a way to better light those because that is a valid concern. So thank you for bringing it out.
Thanks, Supervisor. And I would just mention also following that, as far as maybe not those specific alleyways, but there is a project included in the DRI for consideration that would provide some enhancements to or from the town parking lots and the public parking areas to Main Street, kind of the ins and outs between those, between these different buildings to make it a little more friendly for pedestrians. So that is being considered for DRI funding as well.
We have a question, Lou. Kimberly Malone asks, are you able to give a little more insight, Ari, what the local approval process will look like once the DRI process is complete?
I mean, I'll just give the kind of typical approval process for any project. Post DRI, the projects will still need various levels of approval. Some need site plan approval, some will need, relief from various regulations. Others might need to still work out their financing, and there's a lot of things that still occur after DRI. But DRI generally is here to provide a little bit, as David Ashton mentioned earlier, a little bit more of a piece of the financing tool for those projects that the LPC would support. But all of them have their own unique approval process that they now have to go through at the local level post DRI.
All right, and we've got give or take 10 minutes left. So one more reminder, if you'd like to make a comment or ask a question, go ahead and click the raise hand button.
I would just also add to that, to Lou's answer there about projects. Projects aren't tied to DRI either. Regardless of DRI, projects will move forward or not on their own accord. DRI may provide some financing, fill a financing gap, but by no means whether a project gets DRI funding or does not doesn't necessarily affect its ability to move forward, and it certainly doesn't affect required local approvals and whatever processes are associated with those approvals.
Thanks, Kim. I see that you responded. Thank you.
And we have an update from Linda. The Yankees are up 3-0.
I was literally about to ask that.
Let's go Mets.
So Matt, next time we do this, I'm expecting that the virtual meeting room will be like Nintendo Wii, where we have people literally walking around. You can have a good sense of how many people there.
Sounds like a plan.
No pressure.
I know sort of a privacy setting on the Zoom webinar, but for those of you who are out there as members of the public, we've been averaging around say 20 to 25 people in here all night. So great turnout.
Yeah, it really is.
We won't know how many people are sort of commenting and whatnot in the virtual room until later. Is that right?
That's
correct.
We're also, if you remember, we are going to leave it open for a few more weeks to continue to get additional feedback in.
Right.
I see another hand raised.
All right, Linda, bring you back in.
Oops. Okay. So how do I get into that virtual room? I know I'm probably going to screw that up. That's why I missed the beginning of this meeting. I didn't know where everybody was.
You can, I don't know if you just hit leave and that'll take you right back to it, or if you go back onto the town's website and where all the DRI information is posted, there's a link to the virtual meeting room.
Okay.
And that's where you would want to look at each project, and there's a survey for each project where you can answer a couple questions or put in a comment. And we'll be able to provide that feedback back to the LPC at the next meeting.
Okay.
Hey, Lou,
perfect.
I can put that link in the chat and send that out to everybody as well.
That'd be great.
Oh, that's great. Matt, are you the one rooting for the Mets? I thought it was Dave.
No, I'm up here in New England, and we're just pretending the Red Sox aren't happening this year.
I'm the Mets fan.
Oh, I was right the first time. All right, Dave. Sorry.
Our hopes are pinned on the Celtics here.
Well, go Islanders anyway, right?
Absolutely.
All right. Good night, all. It was good seeing you. I'll see you on the 14th.
Thanks, Linda.
All right. Good night.
Night.
Lou, we were just commenting that you've had this permagrin going the whole night. You've really been able to maintain that the entire evening. So well done.
Thank you, sir. That's my go-to.
Is that what Michelle was planning about?
That was just, I've been getting roasted this entire time behind the scenes.
But far from it. The guys had the nicest smile all night has been Matt.
Very true.
It's a tough job. Gotta hold really still.
We really appreciate your support, Matt, in all seriousness. Thank you for doing this.
So the real reason I'm not on video is that the virtual learning upstairs has kicked me down to the basement for a little while until we figure out their situation. So
Be careful, you gotta fight below that internet signal with the kids.
Yeah.
I just found out how much it would be to upgrade my my internet through Optimum. Not good.
Listen, your dial-up's doing fine tonight. Really, it's not a major issue, and I love the fact that you print up your papers on dot matrix. Really, very advanced. I think it's great.
Thank you, thank you. Appreciate it.
It's hard finding a Zoom client that'll run on an Apple II, but we did. I guess maybe one more call for questions or comments. Anybody out there? You can use the Q&A tool, or you can raise your virtual hand.
Matt, at 8 o'clock sharp, can we close out the meeting?
Sure.
And kind of, I don't want to say kick people out, but kick people out. Sorry, everybody.
Yeah, we'll just say bring things to a close.
There you go. Thank you.
At which point we'll kick people out. Well, it's 7:59 and seeing no further questions or raised hands. I'd like to thank everybody for joining tonight. Thank all of our panelists.
Great job, Dave. So, all joking aside, you did a great job putting it together. I think you had great attendance, and it was nice to see people interacting. But so well done, Lou, Matt, Abigail, Christina, Dave, the whole team, and my good friend Dave from out east.
I agree. It was very well done.
Really.
Well executed.
Thank you all. We appreciate it. I think we're right at that time, Matt. If you can kind of close it out, I'll ask the panelists just to stay on for a second.
Sure. Just two last positive comments to put on the record. Paul Kaplan says not a question, but thanks for your time and hard work to help improve the Baldwin community. And Kimberly Malone says good night all and thank you.
Nice.
Thank you.
You guys.
Give me just a minute here and I'll kind of close the doors here. right. Everyone else is out.
Matt, we're done, right? We can stop the recording at this point.
Yep, let me just lock the webinar so someone else comes back in.